I told you so, except a week or so ago, I pointed out how the media was trying to sort of pull the wool over our eyes by talking about how, quote unquote, Trump judges are attacking and ruling against Donald Trump. And now it's morphed into Ronald Reagan-appointed judges are now attacking Donald Trump. Well, is any of this true? Well, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It is sort of true, but not really. Let's break it all down when you come back, because to be the smartest person in the room, you got to understand the nuance that I keep emphasizing because it's so important so you don't get duped by the lame stream media. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Down, a proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I'm proud to say the top voice of the Second Amendment in America. Thank you, 2025 Gundies Awards. All right, folks, so about 10 days ago or so, I went over a super nerdy video and I said, you guys have got to understand this key point because the media keeps mouthing certain words and I want you to make sure that you don't get duped. You don't get duped, because if you're going to be the smartest person in the room, you need to understand this game that is getting played by the anti-gun, anti-American, anti-Trump media. And that is this. As you know, we keep seeing newspaper articles that have been saying things like, Trump-appointed judge rules against Trump. Trump-appointed judge says nasty things against Trump and the Trump administration, right? We keep seeing all that stuff, in particular at the district court level, which is the federal trial level. And as you know, we covered this about 10 days ago, specifically, the reason why it's technically true that these are Trump-appointed judges, but not really, is because of that long-standing tradition known as the blue slip process in the United States Senate. Specifically, we've talked about this before, for presidential nominations of federal district trial judges, U.S. Marshals, and I think U.S. attorneys, as I recall. The blue slip process is still in effect. And what is the blue slip process? What is the blue slip? The way it works is, technically speaking, the President of the United States nominates, let's say, Mark Smith to be a judge in a state, federal judge in a state. A blue piece of paper or a blue slip is then handed out to the two United States senators from that state. So if Mark Smith is nominated to be a federal district court judge, a federal trial judge in, let's say, New York or California or Maryland, I would need to have the two U.S. senators for New York, for California, for Maryland, return the blue slip to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and that blue slip not only has to be returned affirmatively by the home state senators, it has to be returned with a little checkbox on it that says, I, the U.S. Senator for New York, I, the U.S. Senator for California, I, the U.S. Senator for Maryland, hereby approve the President's nomination of Mark Smith to sit as a federal district court judge in that respective state where I'm a senator. This has been around for about 100 years, this blue slip process. And the reason why that's important is the only way a Republican president, let's say, can get federal district court nominees appointed and confirmed to states that have two Democratic senators, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, California, Hawaii, Maryland, you get the point, Illinois, is if those senators both agree with the president that they will not oppose the nominee, that they will return the blue slip and indicate, I approve. And this means that for a Republican president, such as President Trump, to get federal district court judges appointed and confirmed to the federal bench, he has to negotiate with the Democratic senators from those blue states. And that's why you will sometimes see the Senate vote on 15 judges, because there would be some sort of a deal cut where the Democrat senators like Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand from New York will say, we can agree that this particular person is okay to be a judge, and we agree with President Trump, and therefore we will not get in the way. We will return the blue slip and approve that nominee. So as a consequence, what happens is these judges appointed by President Trump to the federal bench are not necessarily conservative or Trump supporters in the least, because President Trump or any Republican president cannot get good conservative originalists on the bench at the district court level as a general matter in the blue states, because the Democratic senators in New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, Hawaii, California, Maryland, etc., will not return the blue slip. And when they don't return the blue slip as a matter of Senate rules, the United States Senate Judiciary Committee will not even hold hearings on a presidential nominee to be a federal district court judge without the return of the blue slip by the home state senators. And as a consequence, if they don't get a hearing by the U.S. Senate Committee, the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, there will never be a vote on their nomination by the United States Senate in total. So therefore, it'll be a waste of time for the president to nominate someone that the home state U.S. senators will not sign off on for the federal district courts. Now, this has been around for about 100 years. And the reason why this is important, and I'm tying this into today's breaking news, is there are now stories out there, including in Political, for example. Here's a quote of a title in Political. It just came out. Quote, these Reagan, hear what I just said? These Ronald Reagan-appointed judges have had it with Trump. And then they talk about this judge from Massachusetts who was appointed by President Ronald Reagan to the federal district courts in Massachusetts in 1985. He's a 78-year-old senior judge by the name of Mark Wolf, and he has this big splash resignation, despite the fact being a Reagan appointee to the federal bench. I cannot handle any more of President Trump, and I need to resign my seat as a senior judge in Massachusetts to speak out against President Trump as a Reagan appointee to the federal bench. Well, guess what, folks? Remember I told you this is the game getting played, and as the smartest person in the room, I was going to make sure you understood it, and you could be like back of the hand these stories. Here's a perfect example. Mark Wolf was, yes, legally speaking, he was nominated to be a federal district court judge in Massachusetts in the year of our Lord, 1985, and President Ronald Reagan did technically submit the paperwork to the United States Senate for him to be a federal district court judge in Massachusetts in 1985. Who were the U.S. senators in 1985 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Senator Ted Kennedy of Kennebunkport fame and Senator John Kerry. That's right. The U.S. senators in 1985 for the state of Massachusetts were John Kerry and Ted Kennedy. Do you really think that those two U.S. senators in Massachusetts were going to return the blue slips for a federal district court judge in Massachusetts, for a true originalist who respected the Constitution, that loved the Second Amendment, respected our Bill of Rights, and wasn't just going to rubber stamp the left-wing progressive cause? Do you really think that those two senators from Massachusetts were going to allow President Ronald Reagan the opportunity to fill those federal district court seats in Massachusetts? No chance, no way, no how. So again, because of this ancient history, like a 100-year-old tradition in the U.S. Senate of allowing U.S. senators in the home state where the president nominates a federal district court judge, giving those two U.S. senators essentially veto power over them by either not returning the blue slip to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, or if they return the blue slip to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, they can check off the box, I do not approve of him. And either way, because of Senate traditions, that individual will not get a hearing in the committee, and as a consequence, there will never be a vote in the U.S. Senate to confirm him, which means the only way President Reagan in 1985 could fill seats, for example, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, would be to nominate someone for that seat, in this case, Mark Wolf, with the consent of and approval of Senator Ted Kennedy and Senator John Kerry. But here we are in the year of our Lord 2025, and now we're getting hit left and right with, when it comes to the Trump appointees to the district courts, Trump appointees to the district courts in Massachusetts and Maryland, in Illinois, in California and Hawaii and so on, are ruling against Donald Trump even though they're his appointees. And now we're getting Ronald Reagan appointed federal judges are now attacking Donald Trump, including Mark Wolf, the 78-year-old federal senior judge. Now, I want to make one note about this. Mark Wolf as a senior judge means the following. when you are a full-blown judge, you're an active judge. If you take senior status, it means it's kind of a semi-retired status, but the reason why it's significant to take senior status is because your seat is technically vacant, which means that the president can now fill it with another younger judge. So Judge Mark Wolf took senior status when? During the administration of Barack Obama, allowing Barack Obama to fill Mark Wolf's active seat in the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts with a Barack Obama pick. And now Judge Mark Wolf is 78, and he's now out there speaking out against Donald Trump. Now, I have to give you some good news here because I want you to understand what I'm saying is that an excellent attorney who does a lot of great work in the media and beyond, Mike Davis, has a great article in Fox News, and I just want to give you a couple quotes from him because it's kind of reaffirming what we've talked about this issue over the last couple weeks. And this is such an important issue. I really wanted to make sure you guys got this nailed down because the media keeps doing this. Reagan-appointed judge attacks Trump, Trump-appointed judge attacks Trump, and you need to understand that it's by and large BS. Here's what attorney Mike Davis had to say about this very issue dealing with blue slips. He wants you to hear it from him as well. Former U.S. District Judge Mark Wolf was appointed to the bench by President Reagan in 1985, but he is no judicial conservative. Wolf received the stamp of approval from the most leftist home state duo in the U.S. Senate history, Ted Kennedy and John Kerry. The reason the approval of these radical senators was necessary lies in a century-old Senate tradition called the blue slip. Home state senators can veto nominations of U.S. district courts, judges, U.S. district judges, U.S. attorneys, and U.S. marshals. Nominees will not move forward without the return of the blue slips from both home state senators. Bingo. Exactly right. Attorney Mike Davis reaffirms what we've been talking about, that the blue slip process for U.S. district court judges remains in effect today, which means that if Donald Trump wanted to appoint Mark Smith or William Kirk or Tom Grieve or anyone else like that to a U.S. District Court judgeship, let's say in New York, Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand, the two U.S. senators from New York, would have to approve that nomination. They would have to not only return the blue slip physically to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, but that blue slip would also have to read that I, Chuck Schumer, I, Kirsten Gillibrand, U.S. Senator from New York, hereby approve the district court nomination by President Donald J. Trump of Mark Smith to the federal bench in New York. And we obviously know that will never occur. So again, going forward, when you hear these references to either a Trump-appointed judge throws Trump under the bus, or even a Reagan-appointed judge throws Trump under the bus, which is the new thing they're doing, always keep in mind the blue slip process to be the smartest person in the room and to understand what's really happening in these contexts, which is, yes, they're legally appointed by a Republican president. They're legally appointed by President Trump or President Ronald Reagan, but that doesn't make them in any way, shape, or form conservative. And by and large, they're going to be your typical left-wing progressive, anti-Constitution, anti-Second Amendment, anti-Trump kind of people that you can, just grab out of a phone book of Cambridge, Massachusetts, in any respect. There's no special meaning to the fact that they were appointed to the federal bench by a Republican president because of the existence of the blue slip process that's still in effect all across America, including in particular in these anti-Trump blue state jurisdictions and the U.S. senators that obviously don't like Donald Trump at all because they're Democrats and they have Trump derangement syndrome as a general matter. So anyway, folks, hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you follow me over there on X at For Boxes Diner. Don't forget to subscribe both to YouTube and to Rumble, and I look forward to talking again real soon here at the 4 Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.